Hi, everybody. I'm Tom Barnes, and this is the Stories from the 78 podcast, kind of a behind-the-scenes story, if you will, of producing content here in Chicago for a news station that is CBS Chicago, and also my website, Stories from the 78. Why the 78? People ask me this all the time, and some arguments might happen because some who know Chicago are like, well, we only have 77 neighborhoods. Like, well, the White Sox currently trying to build on a parcel of land called the 78. And the reason why it's called the 78 is because it would be the 78th neighborhood. And yes, we all know that Chicago has many more neighborhoods than 78 of them, but those are the big neighborhoods, and all the sub neighborhoods are, inside all the other 77 neighborhoods. So I digress. Either way, big week this week over at CBS, and things that I posted on the website. Did the MSI 007 exhibit, and that is, if you like James Bond, you will love going over the 007. And really cool behind the scenes thing that you need to check out when you're there is they have a lot of the cars and a lot of the inventions from all the James Bond movies, and you can walk right up. I mean, they have a car that they set the record for the most flips on TV or in a movie of all time. I think it was like 12 flips, and there's an Aston Martin car. You got to check that out. For that alone, if you are a fan of that experience, you need to check that out. Also went over to Fulton Market at Oakville, and that place is spectacular because right there in Fulton Market, it's a California-themed, vineyard restaurant. They have a tasting room. The space is massive. They have an upstairs that has outdoor patio that's right in the heart of Fulton Market. It's right off of Green Street in Randolph. Cool spot. We spent a few hours there. And another thing, so I've been at CBS since, I would say November of 2023, right? And after a brief stint in, a big mistake of checking out nonprofit work. Wasn't for me. But one of the things when I got to CBS was they wanted me, and I quote, bring some of the fun that I used to produce over at WGN TV and also on my website, Stories from the 78. And, we get pitches all the time being a producer in Chicago. On a daily, probably get, if I don't clear out my emails throughout the day, if I just let it be per day, probably 300. And that's because I'm not that popular, but it's more about people who send pitches to the station. And I'm on a distribution list of people that things just go to, right? So I remember a couple weeks ago, I get an email sent to the station about Donny Osmond. And I'm like, oh, Donny Osmond, Soldier of Love, Donny Osmond, Donnie and Marie, Donnie and Amazing, and Joseph in the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat that played in Chicago for like 2 years. That Donny Osmond, right? So I was like, all right. So I sent an email to the contact there, and I said, is Donny doing any press? Because usually when they're doing press, they'll say they're doing a press tour. If you want a satellite time, sign up for a time, and we'll figure out a day, and all day long he'll be doing press, right? That's what it's called, a press junket. That's what they do. That's not what this was. This was just a pitch for Donny Osmond to play in Chicago later this year. So I emailed them and asked them, hey, can we have Donny Osmond on the show? And they said yes, and we did it via Zoom, which is so 2024 to talk to Donny Osmond on Zoom. But that's thanks in part to the pandemic. And why am I telling you this story? It's interesting because for years, CBS Chicago didn't quite do these types of stories. They were really great about doing the hard news stories, investigative journalism, fantastic at that stuff. They just didn't do this other stuff. But, with the, times changing and things changing, we were doing all that stuff, but we're also doing some of the fun. And that's why I worked there. So I booked this, and I'll never forget when one of my coworkers, her name is Sue, she's like, wait a minute, we have Donny Osmond on the show? Like the Donny Osmond? I'm like, yeah, Donny Osmond, which is normal for me only in the sense of I booked Donny Osmond at WGN many times and other celebrities. We're just not doing that over at CBS very often. So booked Donny Osmond, and it was a great segment. And our my coworker, Dana Kozlov, who was on one of our anchors, she crushed on Donny Osmond hard. She had her albums and she was talking to him about it, which is great because it all coincided with Record Store Day, which was that following Saturday. And we were at Beverly Records in Chicago, and I did a double dip on that one. We did the story for CBS live on the Jumpstart segment, and that's the segment I produced with Jackie Kostick. She did an amazing job. really diving into Beverly Records. And if you don't know Beverly Records, go to either CBS2 or my website. I got really in depth about a 10, 15-minute interview with John, who is the son of the son of the owner, who the owner was Christine, and then Jack, and John is the son who's apparently going to take the torch from his dad when his dad's ready to retire, about Beverly Records in Beverly neighborhood in Chicago. And it all worked together, and being in Beverly, it just seemed perfect. And if you've never been, if you're watching this and you're in the Chicago area at all, you probably know Rolling Stone record in at the hip, right? You probably know Reckless Records in the city, Dusty Grooves, and a bunch of other ones on the north side, as the South Siders say. But Beverly Records is like one of the OGs. There used to be this record store in Hegwish that was a big record store. Beverly Records was the other one that wasn't so far east, because Hegwish is like southeast side of Chicago. Yes, there is a southeast side of Chicago. But Beverly Records still there, and it's got thousands of records. Like, they have records everywhere, and they have one of the largest 45 collections in the entire world. And this is one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about this in this podcast specifically. Beverly Records, back in the day when Christine was running the place, they would form, and this is so Southside, right? This is so Southside. She would form, right, friendships with people. And the reason why the whole thing was even there is because her husband didn't know where his wife was throughout the day, because she was a social butterfly. She was out here, out here, out here. So he's like, why don't I just buy you a store and you will be centralized, and I always know where you were, and your friends can come visit you. And it was like a nickel and dime store that had a bunch of things, but they started selling these records, and they started selling more and more, and they started making more room for them and more room for them. And this was in 1967. So by the 70s, Beverly Records was humming on all cylinders, right? And it was a massive place. And all those relations on the south side of Chicago specifically, there was lots of like neighborhood taverns. And neighborhood taverns had two things. They had jukeboxes and beer. And sometimes they had pizza. Thank you, Home Run Inn. And I got it. The relationship formed from John's grandmother with all these jukebox owners who wouldn't know what to do with the old 45s that they have. So they come into Beverly Records, and a lot of times they were just going to throw them away. And somehow they got into the habit of dropping all these 45s off at Beverly Records. I don't know if they were paid for. I don't remember the whole entire details of it, whether they were paid or they just dropped them off because they were used, which I think is what it actually was. They were used. And they'd give it to Beverly Records, and Beverly Records would just keep them, and they would sell them. And right now in 2024, they probably have the largest collection of 45s in the United States. I mean, and I'm not exaggerating. That place has thousands of records, and some of them are on display. Some of them are online, where they can ship them out. Like, I asked John, and one of the things that I wanted was a Bob Seger single of the song Night Moves. And I think I got it right here. Hold on a second. I got to show you. Okay. I know this is probably not translating well on the audio side, but if you want to watch the video, go over to the YouTube page, or there's a link on storiesfromthe78.com, and you can about to see what I'm about to show you. But, here's some of the 45s, and I don't know if you can read that, but that's Bear Down Chicago Bears Polka. There's a Bear Down Chicago Bears Polka. There's a couple other ones. This one is called The Bleacher Boys, Sweetness, Walter Payton. And it's another polka band, polka song. But and this is another great one, because I asked him about, because I can't find the record. This is You Make My Dreams Come True by Hall & Oates, 45. And it's like, it's in decent condition. But it's at 45. And he had it, and he like pulled it out of nowhere, out of like the secret spot that they have where some of their old records sit. But the crown jewel, for me at least, well, this one's pretty cool. And this is a big Bears time. I don't know if you heard they drafted a quarterback, but this is Bear Down Chicago Bears on the original 45 that they used to sell, and Beverly Records sold this back in the day. This is the one, though. Bob Seger, Night Moves. This is a French import. Somehow Beverly Records had it just sitting there, and it's in mint condition. I mean, he called this a sticker sleeve, or sticker, because it's got a picture on the outside, but there's the record. Bob Seger, Night Moves. I don't know. I thought it was really cool. This place is just spectacular. They got lots of things. and you can find anything there. And the guys that are there, they're knowledgeable. That's the thing that they talk about. They talk about all the North Side, the North Side record stores, and there's guys my age who are running them and owning them, and they're great, and they know a lot about music. And those places, I've been to them, and I love going to some of them in the city. But they don't have what these guys have, and it's institutional knowledge. They were growing up and living the times of what the records we're looking for now. So like a Earl Grant record that my dad wanted, they had it. They just pulled it out. Earl Grant was like a singer in the 50s that was popular, and they had it. So Beverly Records, you need to check that out because it's just a cool space. And it was one of those things where I had to do a story for myself, and we did it for CBS for Record Store Day. And also did some fun things. That's over at the website. I went to this place called Umaga Bakery, and it's the first, as far as I know, one of the biggest Filipino bakeries in the country, and it's a reimagined one. It's a newer one. It's not a traditional one in the sense of what you would expect when you're going to an old school Filipino bakery. This is more new school mixed a little bit. The owner, Cassell is her name, and she owns it with her husband, Rob. They brought some family help because they both grew up in bakeries. Rob in the Philippines, Cassell out in California, but both grew up in bakeries. Her dad is helping her. And, Rob's back there doing the thing. And it's opened up in North Mayfair. So if you're familiar with Chicago or you're not, you're coming in from O'Hare, you want to check this place out because it's fantastic. It's right off of 94, so the Edens in Foster. And it's in this big space where there's a Target and the whole thing. Anyhow, they just opened up about first week of April, but it's fantastic. The food is great, and the people are great, and they have all, I don't even know how to pronounce these things, but the packaging is beautiful. The food is old school tradition mixed with new. So they have plenty of things for everybody to check out. Great people, in-depth story about that on the site. And then I went to America's Beauty Show. If you've never done that, and you wouldn't really know it unless you're in the industry. And my cousin Eddie, I do have a cousin Eddie, who works in the industry. He didn't want to go for one reason or another. And I don't know. It's like the Super Bowl, though, of cosmetology and makeup and fashion. Not fashion, I shouldn't say fashion, but things like that. Trends that you were coming to a beauty salon near you. And that's what America's Beauty Show is. And it started up on Friday, went Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and we got a little behind the scenes look. But I tell you, there are some folks that go to that they're interesting. They, there's a very look at me kind of a vibe, but they do have the people who are the self-starters who, went to their parents had a spot maybe in the garage or the basement where they had an in-home studio or a salon, I should say. And now they're, they work for they started a trend that now they're one of the largest, beauty schools in the United States, or they came up with a product. I talked to these two women who are up in Des Plaines that came up with a product that would give you like a facelift. I'm stretching my face for those who can't see this. I'm stretching my face. But it gives you the effects of a facelift, except it's in a cream form. So when it dries, it gets really hard and it stretches your skin. Whether or not that's going to help you or not, I have no idea. But it was cool, and these women are doing it, and the women around them that were interested in this product, they love it. So you're going to see a little bit of that, and a couple stories of the America's Beauty Show. Excuse me. Also, I checked out I checked out Chicago's Rum Festival. And if you've never been to that, it's a Logan Square Auditorium. And I talked to a gentleman that started a spirit company, and they started in Peru, Illinois, not Peru, the country, in Illinois. But the guy was a lawyer, right? And him and his bestie would hang out in the garage in like Ravenswood, and they'd make wine. And they did it for 15 years, just making wine. Didn't really have a passion to do anything else. I think he hated his day job as a lawyer. So he would do the wine on the weekends, and they got to be really good. He started off saying that their wine was terrible. And then he said eventually the wine became really good. And I wanted to try to do this further. So he would start making the wine, and his buddy would make the wine. They make the wine, and people start offering him money for this bottle of wine. People are offering $40 for this wine that was good. So he transitioned to starting a spirit company where they have brandy, they have rum, and this particular place is in one of the participants of the Rum Festival that is at the Logan Square Auditorium that happens in Chicago every April. It's a fantastic thing. I'm looking right near on my website right now because I want to be sure I say the name of the place correctly. Star Union Spirits is the name of the place. They were one of the participants up in the Rum Festival. And if you go to the website, storiesfromthe78.com, we do it at Kuma's Corner because Kuma's is one of the places that has the rums that they use featured throughout. So we had Heather, the bartender, make us these rum cocktails, walks us through this entire thing right there at the front part of the bar, and I get to taste them. And this goes back to, like, this is why I do some of these segments. I get to try things and meet people that I normally never would meet, or things I would try. And this rum was fantastic, and the labels are very, very specific to where they're bottled, and I think that's one of the coolest aspects of this particular company, because the rum is bottled in an old clock factory. And Jeff is one of the co-owners, and he talks me through it in the entire interview. He makes a couple drinks. We show what Rum Festival is like. It's a really cool thing, and I think if you like rum, you got to check out Chicago Rum Festival in general when it comes back. They do them all over the city, but that specifically is a good time because you get to try all these different kinds of rums throughout the city, and I got to tell you, it's a lot of fun. And yeah, I'm rambling. So anyhow, that is kind of what happened this week. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I didn't talk about. This will be edited because I didn't do that. Okay. Where's it? So Star Union Spirits, that's the name, Star Union Spirits. Be sure to check them out because it's locally made. The bottling is really good. The product is great. Stop over at Kuma's and have a drink. Ask for Heather. It's a good time. You got a hold of me. You got a story you want to tell me about, shoot me an email, tombarneychicago@gmail.com. Go to the website. Check out. I have like 1,000 videos and stories of all things happening in Chicago or out of Chicago, because if I'm traveling somewhere, it's by way of Chicago, right? So go over there, storiesfromthe78.com. I'll see you guys next week. Thanks for watching.